Today is the continuation of all things parts. Today is kind of that informal discussion that we have during the cataloging circle, and then there will be a more formalized training on August the 4th, which is going to be the summer workshop, which also functions as the cataloging refresh for and recertification for Cat 1, individuals with Cat 1 permission. At the end of this barely a slide deck, I do have the registration link for that, which has been sent out several times, but in my experience, it never hurts to send out the links more often than necessary rather than less often than necessary. So if you haven't registered for that and you're interested, that link will be available. We still have a bunch of people. So the interesting thing about today is the interesting thing about today. Yeah, it was interesting to me. I don't know if you think that's interesting. Is we had over 50 people registered for this cataloging circle. So we're going to go through very briefly the feedback that came, and I'm also I'm sending a message to Anna because there's something that I want to share with you. So we're going to go through that, and then I would really encourage you all to participate in the discussion either with your microphones or in the chat box. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, there have been some people that came in since I said this. If you can make sure, if you have not already done so, to put your name into the chat box so I have a record of you being here and can send out the appropriate LEU to you. So in the feedback form for this session's topic of interest, there were, of course, just the basic questions that that generally go out, and as I was going through, for all of the people that were registered to be in this session, there was very little feedback, and I think that is an indication that we're using parts in a fairly consistent manner. And then also that there's an opportunity to use them more in different instances. So the first question was, for what have you used parts? And the responses were what you would expect for video discs and for multi-volume book sets. And those were actually the only two things that were provided in it. So, and I see already Lauren and Sarah are mentioning magazines. Britta has put, you know what, pardon me, I'm just going to go into this, and let me make sure that you can actually see this share. Yep. Okay, great. We'll get back in here and I can add these things in here. So magazines. Oh, that font size is different. That's so annoying. Audiobooks with large amounts of discs. So Christy, I have a question about that, of discs. So are you then circulating part of the book and then they can come back and they can get the next part? Or how is that working as far as the circulation of those things go? And As always, you can turn on your mic if you would rather talk that way.
Okay. Usually I turn on like disc 1 to 15 and then 16 through 30, and then I have one that's 17 through 45. So it's kind of 45 disc at one time is just like too much for most human thought, and so it's easier to break it down into 15.
Okay, and do people circulate those separately?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we circulate them in 3 parts, so.
Okay, that makes sense. Those are beastly books. I mean, not in a bad way, just really, really big. Are there some other ways that that you are using parts in addition to those things that are listed here? And I'm going to add another one here that I'm not, it kind of falls under multi-volume book sets, but kind of doesn't. And kind of falls under magazines, but kind of doesn't. And that is manga. I don't want to say oftentimes, but sometimes they have the same standardized number, but then, well, if you catalog them, you know what I'm talking about. So that they can all go on one record, similar to a magazine, but then have different volumes, or the next issue be attached to that as a separate part.
One other thing I thought of is we have a bunch of great course kits, essentially. And we, instead of putting them all in some kind of container and circulating them like that, we just cataloged the parts of it individually, so you can check out the book or the DVDs and or audiobooks that go with it. And so we use parts for that. They shelve much more nicely that way.
Oh, yeah.
Than putting them in containers.
Those clam shells that they seem to ship in that never stay shut and have things falling out everywhere. Not that that's been my experience. That's kind of been my experience.
And we found that sometimes people, like, they don't care about having the book anyway, or maybe they only want the book, and so people will just check out the parts they want.
Do they then have the opportunity, well, I guess they probably would, to select all parts if they're placing it on hold?
Yeah, and we actually shelve them all together so that, you know, if people want them, they can
grab and go.
Grab all of it.
Or grab what's there, unless if somebody else has actually circulated that.
They honestly, they don't, like, they're not super popular. So
it's one of those things that, again, this is from my very limited experience, that people really, really want, because it's high quality stuff, but then they really, really want it, but they don't really, really want to use it. They like the idea of having the access to possibly use it at some point, maybe.
Yeah, and I feel like we should really be promoting them right now, because it actually does seem like the sort of thing that people would want to do now of any time. But we also have them, like, available digitally somehow, which I forget how. It's one of our bazillion different electronic resources. And I would be curious to see if the stats on those have been more, but maybe on the one hand, it's like, well, people might have time right now, but on the other hand, people might just feel too overwhelmed to try and learn about great artists of Europe or whatever.
And I kind of feel like the whole, now you have time to do things you have time to do things that you couldn't do before is maybe not really a reality, because there are other things that people are really worried about. And then there's a lot of emotional labor going into just like, I don't know, getting out of bed, making food that's nutritious, putting clothes on. So, and that's for anybody. And then those of us that are, well, those of you that are now opening your libraries, and then those of us who are supporting that, there's a whole other layer on top of that. So I don't want to learn anything right now other than the thing that I need to learn, like right now when I realize I have to learn it. I don't want to say I don't want to learn anything, but I don't have some grand like curriculum plan for self-improvement right now. I don't know. It would be interesting though. I know that was kind of the push. Oh, look, you have time on your hands. Now you can go do all those things you didn't have time to do before.
I will be curious to see if in the fall there's, well, in the fall, it's coming in a few weeks, but I don't know what the mix is going to be as far as people who go back to school and people who are homeschooling. But I think in our community, it's going to be a lot of homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe there will be more demand then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So is there anything else that needs to go on this list of ways that you are using parts, or ways that you want to use parts, maybe even? Something that you've thought about doing that maybe haven't implemented yet? I don't know. I just kind of like to sit around and actually think about that for a second, but I'm not going to do that since we're here live. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. What are some issues that you have encountered using parts? And excuse me, my own grammar is terrible. So again, there was not a whole lot of feedback on this, but I think we're going to add to this right now, and I'm going to, because this, let's change that font so that it's consistent. I am just going to read this. I find that I have been finding books with parts, not because they are part of a set, but using the part to tell the number in the series it is. Is anybody else using parts for a series statement? I mean, I personally would recommend against doing that, because it's not really the series is not a unit. So I have not seen those records. Now, of course, especially if they're not on the same record, and it would require a series record for it to, as opposed to an actual bibliographic record or a monograph record, or however you want to call that. Definitely could cause issues with holds. So that's interesting. If you run across those records, I think that would be something to either send to the list or contact the library. There are many mechanisms, but I don't think that should remain like that. Amanda has, some people use all discs when there's only one disc listed on the record. Not sure if this is an error. Amanda, I think that is being extra thorough. And Shelley, I think that kind of goes to what we were talking about a little bit via email this morning. When there's only one disc that's listed on the record, and then parts being assigned in that case. Does anybody want to weigh in on that?
If there's only one disc, you don't need to put all disc. It's redundant.
It is redundant. And so one of the things that Shelley, I don't want to like say anything that was said in confidence to me. So if you have anything to say about this, okay. So there has been pressure in a library where Shelley may or may not work, from a non-cataloger, from non-catalogers. I don't actually know the specific place of pressure, but I'm going to assume that it's definitely a non-cataloger to use parts because of circulation statistics. And of course, circulation and parts do go into one another, but applying parts to items that are on a record where there's actually only one disc that is there, or it's only going to ever circulate as that one self-contained unit, even if there is like a bonus disc or something like that. And I think that what has happened is that somebody in that extra thoroughness has assigned a part when a part was unnecessary. And so that then it becomes a decision from people that want to attach to that appropriate record later on, whether or not they continue in that extra thorough partness, or they just attach to the record and have no assigned parts. But then are those records going to be targeted for holds? So Shelley, is that there's that direction, and then there's also then the pressure of, do you, because somebody did at some point that extra thorough thing, then do you continue to validate that extra thoroughness by assigning parts when it's really not appropriate, just because that's going to impact those holes and then those circulation statistics?
So the thing is that the circulation desk is confused because when a patron places a hold on a DVD, they ask, well, which part do I select?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have 13,000 DVDs that are now requiring parts, which in my humble opinion is ridiculous if it's a DVD on a DVD record, not on a combo pack. I get the combo pack thing. But when they're just looking at a DVD record and they want the DVD, they should be able to just place the hold and not have to select a part. But now as the situation stands is that some libraries have parts, some don't.
Mm-hmm.
If the patron selects the part and our library doesn't have the part assigned, they're getting one from somewhere else.
And
that's the problem, is that
Are those other
parts aren't necessary, in my opinion.
Breaking it into parts? I mean, are those other libraries actually breaking it into parts, or are they saying this one thing is also a part?
Yes, that's what we're supposed to be doing now. Yes, and you have to have DVD on a DVD that's on a DVD mark record. It's insane.
That's from the cataloging committee.
It is.
It's insane.
All DVDs and Blu-rays are supposed to have parts now.
Mm-hmm. And there hasn't been any automated thing to.
Right. And so
that.
Kind of a mess, but. But I wanted to talk about the all discs thing. And whenever there's an all discs and it's only one disc, I always worry that that's as a result of like a mismerge, and that it came from another item where it did have multiple discs. So if I see all discs on a one disc record, I usually contact the people and say, hey, check your item. Is it really multiple discs?
And I think that that's the appropriate thing to do. Because I would make the same assumption.
That's usually the case. That actually, it's been a toss-up. Sometimes it's just been the part's wrong, and sometimes it's been it didn't go on that record.
Right. I mean, I want to look at something real quickly, because I believe, but I'm I'm thinking about several different things. I think that only Cat 1s can create parts.
Mhm.
And so that is something, that's I think I'm definitely going to refer that back to, and is Jennifer's in here. Jennifer is hearing this. So for the workshop on August the 4th, I think that definitely needs to be reiterated.
Yes, I'm with Jennifer. Cat 2s can create can create a part. They just can't edit it.
Or they can't merge
Right.
parts.
And yes, Shelley, we had to go through all of our DVDs and say that there was a DVD.
So can somebody give me an indication why you think?
Or it doesn't get picked for the hold.
Right. Why a Cat 2 could create a
For
part.
magazines, probably.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That definitely, I think that's something that, and this is referring to the all discs, and just the creating of parts in general, that there needs to be a real push toward consistent and thoughtful behavior, that yes, you can create this part for your library, but understanding that we use a shared catalog and we're using these records together, and so is this meaningful for other people who may be assigning parts as well, and can they use that part that was created. And then I think, Britta, I think that the single disc DVD issue probably needs to go back for some refinement. Does that, I don't know. Tell me something. Your mic is, I know, this has been the story of my day. That's okay, yeah.
I think the reason it was decided to put like DVD or Blu-ray on all records, regardless if it was on a combo pack or not, is to make it easy for the patron to know if they are. Shelley, you're muted if you wanted to say something, but I think that was the main reason. So they would have an easier way if they're picking apart on one record that they know. And if it pops up on like a non-combo record, then they know what they're doing and can just pick the part from there. I'm not explaining it well, but
no, that is the discussion, so that it's a consistent user experience from one. I mean, if you're dealing with DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever kind of video disc, that if you see parts in one record, you go to another record, you also see parts. But I don't know that, well, the issue kind of is right now for patrons as well, because there has not, it's not done, but that is a pretty significant amount of catch up if you're talking 13,000 discs or whatever, that you have to at least look at and make a decision about, to not have some level of automation. I don't know what the automation would look like, but that to support you in that. I think there was also concern when records are merged that the part would be in place. So when you have the individual DVD or Blu-ray record that's then being merged onto a combo pack record, Jennifer. Okay. Okay. There definitely needs to be continued both discussion about that, but then also training too, which that doesn't really address that backlog of work, but the creating and assigning of parts is a training issue, I think. Then I thought that this is kind of the thing that always stops me, is the changing the capital D discs to lowercase discs after having done it the other way for so long. It takes just time to do it, but then it also takes time to redo the routine in your head, in my head. So those things, it would be easier to be notified when that occurs. Referring to the merging, Shelley? Okay. I'm thinking through, so that there would be a possibility to merge things. A bucket would go out, you could check your things, and then determine if you needed to assign parts prior to the merge happening. Is that a quick and dirty workflow for that?
And there's also just with the DVDs and everything getting apart, that means that like if one library goes through and puts parts on all their DVDs, but other libraries say don't have time to do that right now, then that means only that one library's DVDs are going to fill up holds.
Right.
Because on that record, it'll say any unassigned part or DVD. And patrons are 99.9% of the time going to choose DVD. So
right.
Now they all have holds on that one part.
Right. So what isn't happening that should happen that would make that easier, better, something, or what is happening that is kind of making it less effective? Or do you not know? That's also valid. I mean, it's valid to say, hey, there's a problem, but I don't know the answer to it.
Whereas I'll say parts as they are necessary in like a combo pack, yes. But when the mark record is for one DVD, it's just redundant, it's increased work, and like Sarah said, it's confusing for the patron. And that's where the pressure is coming from, say, the circ staff, is how does the patron know which one to pick?
And they wouldn't know that because they don't have access to see that necessarily or understand it.
Exactly. So the problem is that some people have done it, some people haven't, some people aren't going to, some people are struggling to get through their 13,000 DVDs to do it. So it's just insanity. And I'm okay. I'm done. I'll stop.
No. I understand that. Yeah. And if you're not following chat, Amanda has a comment here. Everyone has different levels of time and staffing to devote, absolutely, as well as differences in size of holdings or collection size. It's hard to complete the project consistently and at the same time. Yeah, I think that we're all of an agreement with that statement. Vicky agrees with Shelley. Vicky is watching, and so she has Anne, who's actually typing for her right now. So
there was some mention that they might have the ability to automate all of the older DVDs before a certain date to add that part at the state level. Until that point, the DVDs that you want your patrons to catch, there has to be an education time with the patrons and the circulation staff.
Right, which is
there
really
was
not
also
something...
There was also mention that if we end up doing this down the road, as more and more of the combo packs and DVD records could be combined, if the movie was released at the same time, we would feel bad that we had not started this a year or two earlier for all of the ones that we were adding from now on.
I'll revisit the automation. I knew that we had talked about it. And there has to be a way to do some level of automation for it to
I think
relieve some burden.
I think the main idea for the automation was to go for 2006 and under, because Blu-rays only came out like in 2006 or after. So automating for just the DVDs, I think, was the easiest, automation project or program to build.
That's what I remember as well, to avoid hitting those Blu-rays, the release of the Blu-rays. Okay, I have that written down. I mean, that doesn't solve everything at all, but it could help relieve some of the burden. Is a report we can run that gives us which DVDs have parts on them? Katie, I don't know offhand.
I can answer that. There are 2 reports in Anna's shared items housekeeping that talks about parts, monographic parts.
Bring up the client real quick. See if we can't follow that. Are you all seeing the client on my shared screen here?
Go down to Agobin.
Yeah.
Shared items, housekeeping, and she has at least 2 different reports that talk about parts.
Okay, so we have
there's
unparted materials, unparted records. I like the note. This is a very slow, resource-intensive report.
But there's another one too besides that one.
And I think I might have gone past it.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
The other report just lists everything that, everything in a shelving location and lists the parts.
This list of items by CircMod right here, the third one here.
Yeah, and lists the parts. And that one, it's not slow running, and so you can just run it and you can see what things have parts, what things don't. And that's kind of nice because you can see like the ones that have the old-fashioned parts so that you can update them.
And this, so this is something I would do. I cannot say that I recommend that you do this, but I would do it. I would probably, I would do this. If I was working on this regularly, I would set this up as a recurring report that sent me an email notification, so that, because I would be able to see then the progress that was being made on a fairly regular basis, because the parts would change in that report. Depending, I haven't looked, but I'm certainly going to right now.
What I have done is I have run this report for all of my shelving locations with DVDs, and I'm just going through 20 at a time and and updating them. And if nobody else has added the part to that record, I'm not adding it either, because
which and that goes back to that extra thoroughness. I don't think, I mean, I don't know who has time, a regular amount of extra time to be extra thorough. We need to have the appropriate access points for our patrons and our staff, but there's plenty of other stuff to do than to go in and add a redundant part for something. So but I would have this sent to me on a regular basis, just because otherwise, first of all, it's a reminder.
For that, like, I mean, there's like 8,000 items in my report, so I'm not going to keep.
Oh, no. And that's the thing.
It's going to take me probably.
Yeah, it's not a matter of like actually finishing it. It's more a matter of having an updated thing.
Used to get through the first iteration. I don't need it to rerun regularly.
Yeah. No, it would be to have, oh, there's an email reminder, hey, revisit this right now, pick at it a little bit more.
I'm just trying to do a few a day, so.
Fair. Okay, so first of all, we are under no obligation to take an entire hour. We've hit, but I want to leave it open to anybody else that has anything else to talk about parts, whether it's a question or something that's annoying or whatever, or you love. I don't want to just, obviously I'm in a kind of a grumpy mood today, so I'm leaning towards the annoying rather than the positive stuff. But there is positive stuff. Are you saying we should focus on combo pack multi-disc records first as opposed to obviously DVD? Amanda, I'm going to say, yeah, definitely do that. If we are supposed to assign parts to all DVDs or Blu-rays, but we come across a record that does not have that part assigned, why would we not add one? You can add one.
You need to.
Yeah, if it already has, especially right now, that we are assigning parts. So I'm not saying don't do that. We're just acknowledging that it's extra work. Vicky is crotchety day too. Is there anything we need to address on August 4? I think for my part, definitely the consistency in creating part names, and then how to manage these projects. I'm not sure if everybody here is participating in the merging project with Anna. I think that's something we'll talk about. Lisa asks, are we supposed to merge parts that are wrong, like all caps? Yes, it's always helpful to merge parts, as Christy says, when you find them. And punctuation is kind of one of those ongoing nagging things as we get toward having more consistent and efficient records. And Britta says, yes, merging parts that are obviously duplicates is recommended. Karen, we do not have Blu-ray here at Hagerstown. So I'm going to address this to Karen specifically because I was at Hagerstown. And I know that sometimes there are combo packs that come in there, but only the DVD circulates from that combo pack. And then like the Blu-ray may go into a prize giveaway or something like that. In that case, you are going to add parts to those single DVDs because you're gonna use that combo record even though you're not circulating both parts. You are circulating the DVD from that combo pack, and so it can go on the combo pack record. Does that answer that? If I'm getting the use case. Yeah, okay. It's also possible to edit the existing part names. Yeah, if there is, say there is you see that a part has been added, it's an appropriate part, but the formatting of it is not in line with the SOP, it can be edited. So if it's all caps, but now the standard is to have it lowercase and then a space and a number, you can edit that. But if there are two parts where the formatting, and they're the same thing, but the formatting for one, then you would merge those as opposed to editing the bad one and still having two parts that are the same thing there. And then Anita says, always check for existing holds. Yes. And even if the DVD was purchased individually, yes, that's true. And so, I mean, the goal is to have these things findable and to lower the database bloat by having these essentially duplicate records out there, but maybe there was the single DVD that was sold in one case and then part of a combo pack, but it's the same thing that's just stuffed in the same case. Will it ever be possible, Laura? This is yes. So will it ever be possible to change a title hold to a part hold? That is something that we are actively looking to have developed right now, to be able to change the hold type.
And that's definitely one of the things that adds to the work of this project, because when people put parts on a record that has a lot of holds, then you have to cancel all the existing holds and replace them, which is extremely time consuming.
Right.
And so, yes, it's helpful that we're actively developing this, but
it doesn't help like today.
By the time it's developed, it won't be useful anymore. I mean, it'll be minorly useful, but
yeah, it will be.
It's right now when we're doing it with, you know, hundreds of holds that it would be fantastic. In the future, when we're further along in this project, it'll just be a few holds. Because
I'm gonna see,
like right now we have things that we're adding parts to where there are already tons of holds on them. But now when we add new DVDs, we're adding the parts right then. So the holds already are almost all part holds. So someday having this feature, that's great, but it's not that.
We may be actually closer to that.
It's going to arrive too late to benefit this project, really. That's one of the frustrating things about this whole experience.
Yeah. I don't have anything to give you any sense of optimism whatsoever, other than it's an actively discussed thing that we are hoping to get specifications soon and have it available, not necessarily in 3.6, but in the software after the first of the year. We'll see. So the answer is yes, but the when is, I don't know, Sarah. I think there'll still be plenty of work to do.
Well, because Evergreen, Indiana is actively sponsoring this, as soon as we get it, as soon as the update happens, this would be something that we would add in when that gets developed into our system,
rather than it having to be slated for a larger Evergreen release with the whole community.
I mean, because we are actively developing it for us, so therefore when it actually does get developed, it would be applied to our system.
I was going to say, it's in active development right now, isn't it?
I think so.
I was thinking that it was. It's not showing that in the Launchpad ticket, but I was thinking that was what Emerald was working on. We've been talking about it a lot, so.
I think it is one of the projects that we have Emerald actually working on specifically for Evergreen, Indiana.
Right. As opposed to ECDI, which does community-based projects.
Right.
I guess.
So it may come in sooner, Sarah, than you're thinking.
Well, but my point is basically, for me, it's already too late. Like all the things I had where I had 50 holds, I've already done all of those because people want those holds right now.
Right.
So that, yeah, it'll be nice for the things where it's like a hold here and there, but I'm not going to have new ones where there are 50 title holds because now I'm putting the parts on as soon as I add the items. So it, like I say, it's basically, it's already.
But for those libraries that don't necessarily have a dedicated cataloging department or tech services, it will be.
I mean,
I mean, theoretically.
This is a useful feature that should have always existed. So I'm not complaining, but I feel like we shouldn't have implemented this project until we had this functionality.
That's possible. And this is just my little, well, that's possible. That is the reality. You are correct. My little evergreen something. Open source tends to be oftentimes, well, not just open source, software tends to be in a lot of ways reactionary,
Right.
as opposed to being proactive. There are some things that are proactive about it. Somebody has a great idea and we're going to develop this thing and it's going to make things great, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then comes in the actual software and all of the unintended consequences that go along with that. And then why didn't we think about this, and why didn't we plan it this way, and this actually created more work, and that is oftentimes the standard as opposed to the exception. And it's not just open source software. The nice thing about that is that we can actually then hopefully deal with the unintended consequences, as opposed to, oh, that's going to be $10,000 and another 6-month wait or something. So sometimes it's still a 6-month wait, and sometimes it's $10,000, but not always. Anyway, that's my little software thing. Unintended consequences are a thing that we hope never happens, and they just always, absolutely always do. So Laura, that was a lot of discussion about that question. Thank you. Anything else about parts in general? Okay. So I did put these, the recording for this will of course be available probably this afternoon. And so you'll have access, these are to the chapters in both the procedures manual and the training manual for parts, and then the registration link for the cataloging workshop. And a reminder that that will function as the refresher for CAT 1 recertifications, but it is not only for individuals with CAT 1, and we encourage everybody to attend it, even if they are not in tech services, so to speak. So any other questions about that or anything? And then the next and final cataloging circle, at least for this summer, is going to be in 2 weeks on the 30th, and we'll talk about pre-CATs and interlibrary loan materials in Evergreen. And then we will also briefly discuss, if you want to continue doing this, starting it up at some point, either in the fall or the spring, or doing a limited run. So something to think about prior to the next one, but I'll be sending that. Not everybody is going to be here for that cataloging circle. So I'll send a survey to that effect out to the cataloging list as well, about how, if you'd like to continue these roundtables.